find a gigantic hydrogen ball due to the rotation of the 6 sextillion tons rock that pressed me against it by curving space-time, came into a position to shoot the first photons produced by nuclear fusion through the transparent silicon dioxide panes into my regeneration room, I ended my regeneration state. I massaged my optical receptors with my upper extremities and let the photons, which had been traveling for 8 minutes from this nuclear inferno, fall through the also transparent cells in my receptors, so that they could be converted into synaptic activity for orientation. I went to the food preparation room for the first intake of nutrients and took some glandular secretion of a horned even-toed ungulate from the vapor compression cooled insulation chamber. Then I increased the kinetic energy of the atoms of the liquid by electromagnetic radiation. After ingesting the secretion into a digestive bag filled with acid, I went to another room, which was intended for getting rid of waste products of the energy production in my organism. Up to 100 trillion small creatures that lived inside me helped me in this process. About 1800 genera and 36,000 species. About 1.3 times as many microorganisms as my organism contains cells lived inside me. Afterwards I cleaned my surface with dihydrogen monoxide, the only chemical compound in my environment that was present in the aggregate state solid, liquid and gas. By heating I accelerated the evaporation of the compound and then covered myself with a new layer of plant and synthetic fibers. Then I left my shelter. I moved for the duration of about 3 trillion oscillations of a cesium atom through space-time to a resting place in the midst of a myriad of stationary life forms that transformed the radiation of the hydrogen ball into energy-rich biomolecules, enriching the atmosphere with oxygen that I needed for my organism working. My view on the space outside the rock which I was located on was limited by a single color, because the radiation of the hydrogen ball consisted of many different wavelengths, and due to scattering on particles in the atmosphere, only one was left. Small liquid droplets floated through this atmosphere and formed gigantic structures that moved slowly and changed their shape. I knew that sometimes there was such an amount of liquid in them that it was released as drops over a long period of time. At the same time there could be impressive electrostatic discharges that briefly reached temperatures several times the temperature on the surface of the hydrogen ball above me. I had some nutrient leftovers with me and threw them at the small creatures that were also present, which were able to counteract gravity by generating dynamic lift and move freely in the atmosphere. These were the last survivors of a group of terrestrial vertebrates that produced species that were among the largest living things ever to move on land, and were extinguished 66 million years ago by the impact of a giant asteroid. I was there for a long time until the last photons of the hydrogen ball arrived at my location, and the atmosphere became transparent. So I got a glimpse of thousands of others that were in such great distances that the photons of them had been traveling for many years, sometimes hundreds or thousands. So I could take a look into the past. They circled with billions of others around a center in which there was something so massive that space and time changed places there. If I looked very closely, I could even see another spiral structure, like the one I was located in. The photons from there had been on their way for 2 million years, until exactly this moment. And I knew there were billions of such structures. I also knew that most of the atoms inside and around me were the result of processes inside such hydrogen balls, because they produced not only radiation but also new kinds of matter. Later, when the atoms of the gas surrounding me already had less kinetic energy due to the absence of the radiation of the nearby hydrogen ball, I made my way back to resume my regenerative state. When walking, orienting myself with artificially generated radiation, I knew that the atoms in my shoes and the atoms in the ground were never really touching. It was just repulsive forces. And atoms were nearly 100% empty space anyway, like myself. But anyway, at this moment I felt full of everything. On this day where nothing really happened. I'm Mon 1415 and the real world is incredible.